Today we're diving into the story of Nichiren, who is, without a doubt, one of the most important figures in the history of Japanese Buddhism. But we're going to look at a perspective that might just flip everything you think you know about him on its head.
You know, this one sentence right here really gets to the heart of it. It challenges centuries of what we've been told about this 13th century monk. See, the common story paints him as this radical rebel who just shattered his tradition. But what if that isn't the real story at all?
Yeah, what if that whole narrative is completely backwards? We're going to explore a totally different take, that Nichiren wasn't some heretic trying to invent a new religion. What if he was actually a purist, trying to restore the deep original integrity of the very tradition he came from?
Okay, so first things first, let's just quickly touch on the story that you've probably heard a dozen times about who Nichiren was. Right, so the standard view is that Nichiren was a total revolutionary. He's painted as this guy who trained in the established Tendai school, took one look at its teachings, said nope, and just walked away to create his own brand new form of Buddhism, a complete and total break from his past. But to really get what was going on, we have to look inside the Tendai school itself. Because back in the 13th century, it was built on this really fascinating and frankly powerful contradiction. And we're not talking about some small academic debate here. No, this was a deep, fundamental tension, a conflict between what the school preached as its core philosophy and what it actually did in its day-to-day practices. It's the kind of tension that could challenge any institution, really. So this lays out the central paradox perfectly. On one side, you have the philosophy, this incredible idea of original enlightenment, which says you are already perfect right now. Your struggles, your desires, all your defilements, that stuff is enlightenment. But then, on the other side, look at the practice. It was full of these complicated rituals and chants designed to purify you, to gradually transform you into a Buddha, as if you weren't one to begin with. It's a classic case of what you say versus what you do. So Nichiren sees this huge inconsistency, and he asks a question that is so simple, so direct, but also incredibly disruptive. He looked at all these complex rituals and didn't see them as evil or anything like that, but just unnecessary. He basically argued that these practices were actually getting in the way, that they were undermining Tendai's most profound insight, that we are already whole, already complete. And this is the absolute crucial point. He wasn't trying to throw out the philosophy he had dedicated his life to. Not at all. He was demanding that the school's actions should actually line up with its own deepest beliefs. He wanted to align what they did with what they said. It was a call for integrity, really.
And this brings us to Nichiren's true innovation. See, it wasn't about dreaming up new beliefs. It was about creating a new, radically consistent method to live by the old ones.
Now, to really get inside his head, you have to understand this one Japanese character, soku. It's so important. It doesn't mean one thing becomes another thing through some process. It means two things that seem totally different are and have always been just two sides of the same coin. It means is. And this chart just illustrates that distinction brilliantly, right? The common practices implied that your messy human struggles had to be transformed into enlightenment. But Nichiren, taking the Tendai philosophy of sokuzitsu at its word, said, no, they don't become enlightenment, they already are enlightenment. The whole point is to recognize a reality that already exists, not to create a new one.
So, how do you put this into practice? Well, Nichiren went straight back to the source, the founder of the whole Tendai school, a master named Zhiyi. He took a couple of Zhiyi's core principles and just followed them with this unwavering logic that nobody had really dared to before.
And his logic, when you lay it out, is just so simple and elegant, and it comes entirely from his own tradition. Step 1, the Lotus Sutra is the highest teaching. Step 2, its title contains its entire essence. Therefore, step 3, the most direct, powerful, and complete practice you can possibly do is to engage directly with that title. Why would you add anything else? So you see, he didn't invent a new philosophy. What he did was create a new streamlined method so that anyone could directly experience the profound non-dualism that was already at the very heart of Tendai. This method is what's known as the three great secret dharmas. It involved the Gohonzon, which is a scroll to focus on, the daimoku, which is the chanting of the title, and the kaion, a sacred space to practice in. Okay, so for our final section, let's pull all of this together and see how it gives us a completely new picture of who Nichiren really was. This just reframes everything. Instead of a heretic who broke all the rules, this new perspective shows us a purist, someone so orthodox, so committed to the rules of his tradition, that he followed them all the way to their ultimate logical conclusion, even when it made him deeply unpopular. And when you start to see him this way, suddenly all his actions just click into place. His harsh critiques of other Buddhist schools, they weren't about their core philosophy being wrong, but about their practices being inconsistent with that philosophy. His whole goal wasn't to tear anything down, but to simplify, to strip away all the extra layers to reveal the powerful, direct truth that was already there. And really, this is the main takeaway. Nichiren's revolution wasn't about doctrine. It was about practice. He wasn't trying to create a new religion. He was trying to make the most profound teachings of his own tradition accessible and doable for everyone, with an almost shocking level of focus and clarity.
Ultimately, the story of Nichiren leaves us with this really provocative question, one that goes way beyond 13th century Japan. It challenges all of us to look at our own beliefs and ask, do our actions actually reflect our deepest convictions? What happens when you take an idea you truly hold dear and decide to live it out with absolute radical consistency?